Veda Pranihito Dharma.
Veda Pranihito Dharmo.
Veda Pranihito Dharmo.
Veda Pranihito Dharmo.
Hi adharmastad viparyayaha.
Yadharmastad viparyayaha.
Hi adharmastad viparyayaha.
Yadharmastad viparyayaha.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Swayambhur iti Shushuma.
Swayambhur iti Shushma.
Swayambhur iti Shushuma.
Swayambhur iti Shushma. Yamaduta uchuhu.
Yamaduta uchuhu.
Veda Pranihito Dharmo.
Veda Pranihito Dharmo.
Yadharmastad viparyayaha.
Yadharmastad viparyayaha.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Vedo Narayana Sakshat.
Swayambhur iti Sushruma.
Swayambhur iti Shushuma. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Let's do word by word translation. Yamaduta Uchuhu.
Yamaduta uchuhu.
The order carriers of Yamaraja said. Veda.
Veda.
By the four Vedas.
By the four Vedas.
Sama, Yajur, Rig and Atharva. Pranihitaha.
Pranihitaha.
Prescribed.
Prescribed.
Dharmaha.
Dharma.
Religious principles.
Religious principles.
He. Indeed.
Indeed.
Adharmaha.
Adharma.
Irreligious principles.
Religious principles.
Tad viparyaha.
Viparyayaha.
The opposite of that.
The opposite of that.
That which is not supported by Vedic injunctions.
That which is not supported by Vedic injunctions.
Vedaha.
Veda.
The Vedas.
The
The book
Vedas.
of knowledge.
Books of knowledge.
Narayana Sakshat.
Narayana Sakshat.
Directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Being the words of Narayana.
Being the words of Narayana.
Swayambhuhu.
Swayambhu.
Self-born, self-sufficient.
Self-born, self-sufficient.
Appearing only
Appearing only
from the breath of Narayana.
from the breath of Narayana.
And not being learned from anyone else.
And not being learned from anyone else.
Iti.
Iti.
Thus.
Thus.
Shushruma.
Sushruma.
We have heard.
We have heard.
Translation. The Yamadutas replied, that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles. And the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraja. Purport. The servants of Yamaraja replied quite properly. They did not manufacture the principles of religion or irreligion. Instead, they explained what they had heard from the authority Yamaraja. Mahajana yena gatasya panta. One who follows the Mahajana, authorized person. Yamaraja is one of the 12 authorities. Therefore, the servants of Yamaraja, the Yamadutas, replied with perfect clarity when they said, Shushruma, we have heard. The members of modern civilization manufacture defective religious principles through speculative concoction. This is not Dharma. They do not know what is Dharma, what is Adharma. Therefore, as stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Dharma projeto kaitavotra. Dharma not supported by the Vedas is rejected from Srimad Bhagavata Dharma. Bhagavata Dharma comprises only that which is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavata Dharma is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. One must accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender to Him and whatever He says. That is Dharma. Arjuna, for example, thinking that violence was adharma, was declining to fight. But Krishna urged him to fight. Arjuna abided by the orders of Krishna and therefore is actually a dharmi, because the order of Krishna is dharma. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedescha sarve aham eva vedyaha. The real purpose of Veda knowledge is to know me. One who knows Krishna perfectly is liberated. Or as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. One who understands Krishna and abides by his order is a candidate for returning home back to Godhead. It may be concluded that dharma, religion, refers to that which is ordered in the Vedas, and adharma, irreligion, refers to that which is not supported in the Vedas. Dharma is not actually manufactured by Narayana. As stated in the Vedas, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nishvasitam Etad Yad Rigveda Iti. The injunctions of Dharma emanate from the breathing of Narayana, the supreme living entity. Narayana exists eternally and breathes eternally, and therefore Dharma, the injunctions of Narayana, also exist eternally. Srila Madhvacharya, the original Acharya, for those who belong to the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, says, Vedanam prathamo vyaktha harit eva yato vibhuhu atho Vishnu atmaka veda iti ahur veda vadinaha. The transcendental words of the Vedas emanated from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of God. Therefore, the Vedic principles should be understood to be Vaishnava principles, because Vishnu is the origin of the Vedas. The Vedas contain nothing besides the instructions of Vishnu, and one who follows the Vedic principles is a Vaishnava. The Vaishnava is not a member of a manufactured community of this material world. A Vaishnava is a real knower of the Vedas, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Vedeshcha sarve aham eva vedha. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta poem. Om Ajnanatimurandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Itinavine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasha Tadeshakarine. So, we see here in this sloka, the Yamadutas are saying that that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is religion. And Prabhupada, in his purport, he talks about how in this modern world people manufacture their own religion, they concoct their own religion. In the Shastras it is said that there are three ways of acquiring knowledge. One is Pratyaksha Pramana. Pratyaksha Pramana is something that you see with your senses. So the five senses, the knowledge acquiring senses, which is the eyes through which you see, the nose through which you smell, the tongue through which you taste, and the skin through which you feel. So these are knowledge acquiring senses. So through these senses, whatever knowledge is acquired, that's called as Pratyaksha Pramana. And then there is Anumana Pramana. Anumana Pramana is inference, is deduction. So an example for Anumana Pramana is you hear some noise in the background. Let's say you hear some vessels moving in the kitchen. So you infer from that there is somebody in the kitchen who is cooking, and so while they're cooking, the vessels are moving. And that's how you get knowledge from hearing, and you're able to deduct some knowledge out of it. You infer some knowledge out of it. And that is known as Anumana Pramana. And then the third Pramana is the Shabda Pramana. Shabda Pramana is where you hear from an authoritative source. You hear from the Shastras, you hear from the Vedas. So that's the Shabda Pramana. And the Shastras explain that these three different ways of acquiring knowledge are, one is better than the next. Like So better than the Pratyaksha Pramana is the Anumana Pramana, and better than Anumana Pramana is the Shabda Pramana. And there's actually a nice story that explains how the different levels can be better. So Pratyaksha Pramana is actually fraught with various issues. So if you think about it, when you're trying to acquire knowledge with your senses, we all know that our senses are limited, right? So I want to see something, then my eyesight only sees in the visible range. And if there is something that's preventing my sight, so let's say there's a wall, I can't see through the wall. I can only see up to the wall. And also when you hear something, it's basically your understanding of the world is what influences what you understand from it. So when you hear something, until and unless it's a totally new sound or it's a totally new experience, you really cannot infer much from it. So the story I was telling you about, there was once a widow. She was very, very conscious that she should bring up her children very nicely, give them a very good education, so that they could go up in life and make a name for themselves and get out of poverty. And so what she did, she had very little money. And so all the money she had, she collected with great difficulty, and she got a tutor to come and teach her child. And so, she was she wanted to find out from a lot of people, do you know a good tutor here who can come and teach my child so that they can get a good education and, go forward in life. So, she got the real best tutor, and, the tutor started teaching the son some lessons. And, she was, this went on for a few months. And many months passed by, and she was getting a little impatient. Is my son learning? What is he learning? Is he getting the proper education? So then what she started doing was, so let me go today. It's been about 8 months now since I started getting this tutor. So let me go today and see and hear myself what this teacher is teaching. So when I hear, I know, whether he's doing a good job or not. And so she went there, and she just sat right next to the room where the teaching was going on, and she kept her ear against the door, and she kept very intently hearing what was going on. So this tutor was a really good tutor, and he had been teaching different levels of, first he taught some English, and then he taught some mathematics, and today actually there was a point where he was going to teach geometry. And so he was teaching geometry in the end, he was explaining a triangle and all that, and so he started giving a problem to the student, and that's when this lady came. He said, let ABC be a triangle. And then he was explaining, and then he was trying to explain the problem, and this woman was standing outside hearing. And she said, ABC be a triangle? And she barged in the door. She said, what is this going on here? 8 months I've been giving you my hard-earned money, and you've been teaching ABCs for the last 8 months. This boy already knows his ABCs. He's been learning this from before. You've been teaching this for 8 months. You've wasted your money. She didn't even want to listen to the next step, and she said, you're a total useless teacher. Just go away from my house. Don't even show up again here. So she heard the ABCs. Nothing wrong with it. It was truth. I mean, it is not that it is wrong or it is false or anything like that. I mean, it is ABC that she is hearing. But her understanding of the world is, she knows ABCs, but she doesn't understand that these simple things like ABC can mean a completely different thing to a student of geometry. That ABC be a triangle, so he's already thinking of 3 points joined by 3 lines, and that's a triangle. I mean, it's a different level of understanding of the same words ABC. So like this, when we have this Pratyaksha Pramana, the same words can mean different things. There are different levels of interpretation. And so what happens is, when you're trying to grow up and acquire knowledge by your own senses, you will see that you are the main limitation for the knowledge. And we know that the human being, there are 3 major defects for the human being. One is that his senses are imperfect. We just talked about it. His senses are imperfect. The second thing that happens is that everybody has a cheating tendency. So it just different levels of temptation lead people to cheating tendency. Some people will start cheating for anything, but there are different people who are little more integrity, even need $1 billion to cheat. Some people will cheat for $10. So there is definitely the cheating tendency within a human being, and so this tends to happen within when acquiring knowledge. We have heard that. And then the other thing is that so a person one is senses imperfect, he has a cheating tendency, and then he gets illusion. He is subject to illusions. He gets bewildered. So these are the three defects of a human being, and because of these three defects, Pratyaksha Pramana is always wrought with difficulties. We have seen in our own lives how our understanding of this world has changed quite a bit. Like I remember when we were in school days, everybody thought that the moon was a totally barren place with just some dust and craters, and there was no concept of water being on the moon or there being ice. So in those days, people were very convinced, very strictly, clearly convinced that the moon was a barren land and there was nothing there. And then, over a period of many years now, then they have come to say that, oh no, the moon actually has huge deposits of ice. And they were actually able to send a satellite to plunge into that ice, and the ice came out, and there took pictures of the ice jutting out from the impact. And so the perception of ice being on the moon is something that they learned recently. And so if you look at the Vedas, the Shastras, the Shastras have always been talking about the moon being a very cool planet. If you go back in the Shastras, it's very clear that the moon is full of ice, and that's how they say that the moonshine is a very soothing. The rays of the moon are very soothing on the skin. So, because of this, you see that what the Shastras were saying was always true. It's just that our perception through Pratyaksha Pramana was not allowing us. And obviously, to understand about the moon, there is some Pratyaksha Pramana, there is also some Anumana Pramana. So there is some induction that's going on. They have some understanding of different ways of perceiving things, and the spectroscopy and other things, and they use all these different methods to acquire knowledge. But then it is very limited. Your understanding does not go beyond your own level of experience, and so it's a very limited way of understanding knowledge. Then the highest understanding, as the Shastras mention, is the Shabda Pramana. The Shabda Pramana is when you are getting the knowledge from the Vedas, from the Shastras. And so it is the Bhagavad. That's why when Bhagavad Gita, when Prabhupada wrote the Bhagavad Gita, he said the Bhagavad Gita as it is come down in the parampara, the knowledge that has come down, and that knowledge is our window into a completely different level of existence. So as in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada talks about this verse, Janma karma chale divyam evam yoveti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti maveti sarjuna. So the Shabda Pramana is the only way we can gain knowledge about the existence of the spirit soul. The spirit soul is something that we cannot really understand, because we cannot see the spirit soul. Even in the Shastra, it is explained that the size of the spirit soul is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. So it's really such a small size, the spirit soul size. So obviously we cannot see from our eyes, and there are it's not something that can be perceived through material senses. And so that's why even if you put an electron microscope and try to look at the region of the heart, the Shastras explain that the soul is present in the region of the heart. We try to go on and try to understand that. It's not possible to perceive. So that's why we have to take the instructions of the Lord as He given it in the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, the Vedas, and where He explains that every living entity has a soul. And this soul is what animates his body. This is Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yantra Rudai Maya, that this body is like a machine. Yantra, just like a machine, there is a machine is being animated by the presence of the soul. So this knowledge we can only get from the Shastric understanding. And so the way to understand this knowledge is tad viddhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. That you need to go to a spiritual master and understand it tad viddhi pranipata, pariprashna and sevaya. These three methods of understanding knowledge. Is pranipata means you need to surrender to a spiritual master. And there is pariprashna, there is mutual back and forth answers, and sevaya, by serving the spiritual master, you understand this knowledge. And the other things that are being mentioned here is that dharma is not manufactured in Narayana. As stated in the Vedas, asya mahato bhutasya nishvasitam etad yad rig veda itihi. The injunctions of dharma emanate from the breathing of Narayana, the supreme living entity. So dharma is basically given by the Lord himself. And what is the purpose of dharma? What is the need for dharma? The reason for dharma is dharmena hina pashiri samanaha. Dharma is what differentiates a human being from other living entities. There are so many living entities in this world. There are animals, there are plants. All of them have the same soul. If you look at an animal, the animal has exactly the same. The elephant has the exact same soul. The size of the soul is exactly the same, 1/10,000 the tip of the hair. And such a huge body of an elephant's body. So the soul, the same soul is present in all living entities. What differentiates a human being from the other living entities is the human being's ability to practice dharma and get out of this material cycle. So that's why it said dharmena hina pashuri samanaha. If somebody does not have the dharmic understanding and does not follow dharma, pashuri samanaha, you're equal to an animal. And this seems like a very strong statement. It seems like a very, very strong statement the Shastras are making. Or if you don't have dharma, you're like an animal. But then, if you think closely and try to spend some time and try to understand this, you will see that this is so much true. The activities that typical animals do, Prabhupada used to say, like this material world, all living entities, there are 4 activities: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. These are 4 activities that they do. It is just that different living entities have a different polished way of, different ways of doing the same activities. Like in a human being, there are very polished people, who have a multi-course dinner. They have spoons laid out, 3 kinds of forks on one side, 2-3 kinds of spoons here, and a lot of cutlery. And you use this spoon for salad, you use this spoon for something else. It's a lot of elaborate arrangement, but the final purpose is eating. It's not very different. And an animal might just lying on the floor and put his mouth on it and eat. So eating, sleeping, mating, defending, these 4 activities are exactly the same in all living entities. What differentiates a human being is that a human being can think beyond that. And can try to go and read the Shastras, try to get an understanding of who am I, what am I doing in this world, what is my position in this material, in this world, and why am I here, and why am I suffering in this world, how do I get out of this suffering. So these are questions that only a human being can ask, and the place to get answers for that, again, many of us have these questions, but we try to use our one method of acquiring knowledge that we're all taught from beginning, which is Pratyaksha Praman. I want to see. So a lot of people say, show me God. I want to see God. Yes, you can see God. It's not that you cannot see God, but you really need spiritual eyes to see God. You already have spiritual eyes. A spirit soul has spiritual eyes. But the spiritual eyes have to be awakened, have to be cleansed. And then you can really see God. No, you can actually see God even with the material eyes, because the Lord comes in the form of Archavigraha. You can look at the Lord and understand, but do we see Him as the Supreme Lord? Do we really perceive God when we see a deity, that perception only comes from purification of your spiritual eyes. The more you are purified by performing bhakti, you can actually see the Lord and really experience the spiritual bliss of seeing the Lord with your senses. So, the main ways of acquiring knowledge that we need to stress upon is getting the knowledge from the Shastras. And the good thing is that the Shastras, there is a very foolproof method in which the Shastras have been passed on through reciprocal succession. Now, the Shastras, as they come down in the reciprocal succession, parampara, evam parampara praptam, imam rajasya viduhu. The Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, this knowledge has come down in parampara, and is available to us and is presented to us, and we have the fortune of reading these books in a language we all understand, in English language. Because Srila Prabhupada, he mercifully wrote all the Shastras. He translated the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, which are the essence of the Vedic knowledge, into English. And it's very well presented in the Parampara understanding. And we should take this opportunity of gaining this knowledge and moving ourselves in the path of liberation from this material world. So we will stop here. If anybody has any questions, any comments?
What is this dharma for a current human being?
So what is the dharma for the current yuga, the current human being? That's a very good question. So when we hear dharma, there is actually different people have a different interpretation of. So what exactly is dharma? What do we do? What dharma do we practice? And so there's actually a nice story where this comes out. So there were once 4 sages were sitting over there and discussing which is the best yuga, and which is the yuga in which I can easily get liberation. And so there are 4 yugas: the Satya Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Kali Yuga. So there are different ways of acquiring salvation in the different yugas. And so the sages were discussing among themselves. So one sage said, the Satya Yuga is the best, because Satya Yuga is the golden age. In Satya Yuga, everybody is very, very spiritual conscious. Their whole life is spent in understanding the Lord. There is no sinful activity at all in this whole world. Everybody is pious, everybody is following the religious principles, and they're trying to understand the knowledge. And so in Satya Yuga, the people in Satya Yuga, they actually live 1 million years. And so for a few 100,000 years, they used to practice meditation. And they used to gain liberation. So the sage said, it's such a good yuga, it's a golden age. Just do a few 100,000 years of meditation and you're liberated. And some other saints said, no, that's a difficult process. The Treta Yuga is a better process. The Treta Yuga is all you got to do is do elaborate deity worship, and that's it. You can get liberation. The other saints said, no, Dwapara Yuga is better. Dwapara Yuga, the process for Dwapara Yuga is through yajnas. So you perform this yajna, and then you give this much in charity to the brahmanas, you give this much gold, and then you're liberated. It's such a simple process to do this yajna. And nobody even talked about Kali Yuga. This is the Kali Yuga. The word Kali itself is a very impure word. It just it creates imbalance. It just brings unwanted bad vibes to the surroundings. So none of the sages even talked about Kali Yuga. So they went on fighting like this, and they said, no, this is not going to get solved. Let's go to Narada Muni and let's ask him what exactly is the way of achieving salvation, which is the quickest way, which is the best yuga. So Narada Muni was actually taking bath in the river, and he was saying his prayers. And so they go over there, and then he said, which is the best yuga? And then Narada Muni just gets up and says, Kalau dosha nidaya rajan asti ekon mahavaraha kirtanalaya krishnasya mukta sangha param praje. Kalau dosha nidaya rajan. And basically, as soon as they heard this, as soon as they heard the word Kali, they all closed their ears. Because they didn't want to hear the word Kali. It's such a bad age, if you think about this age, the Kali Yuga, bereft of all goodness. This age, if you think about the 4 sinful activities, the sinful activities are meat eating, intoxication, gambling, illicit sex. These are all very, very common. Everywhere in this world, you will see that everybody is indulging in these sinful activities. It's so common. So the sages didn't even want to hear this word Kali. And they all said, okay, so Narada said something, did you hear? But none of them heard because they closed their ears. So Narada said, let's listen again. And this time don't close your ears. No, he said, Kali Yuga, Kalau dosha nidaya rajan. Kali Yuga is full of dosha. But asti ekad mahagunaha. There is one nice guna about this. Kirtanareva krishnasya mukta sangha param raje. Just by chanting the holy names of the Lord, you can get liberation in this world. So that is the dharma for this yuga, the chanting of the names of the Lord. So there are different dharmas for different yugas, but this is the dharma that's prescribed for this yuga. It's the simplest way of attaining liberation. And also if you think about it, the process is simple because our surroundings are so difficult. We cannot sit and do meditation. Right? There's so much of disturbance going on. Our mind is distracted, work, the family, we have so many other challenges of life. And so, that's why the Lord is merciful. In Kali Yuga, a very simple process of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, chanting the glories of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra can very easily get you liberated, situated on a transcendental platform and take you back to God. That's the dharma for this yuga.